Everyone is so quick to take melatonin when it comes to sleep. I've got 5 alternatives for you across different categories that might help you sleep better and candidly safer than melatonin. Okay, first off, good old magnesium. But before you skip over this section, there's some interesting news that suggests that you could probably take more magnesium than you have been taking. There's an interesting study that was published in BMC Complementary Medicine and Therapeutics. Took a look at 3 different randomized controlled trials with over 150 participants. Now, what they did in this particular study is they gave subjects up to 1 full gram, 1,000 milligrams of magnesium up to 3 times per day. Okay, so with this, they compared to placebo and they found there were huge improvements, not just in sleep, but more importantly, their sleep latency. 17-minute improvement in their sleep onset latency, which means over placebo, they fell asleep 17 minutes faster, showing that magnesium has a very powerful short-term effect, helping you relax and fall asleep. But there was a 16-minute total increase in their sleep time, which isn't statistically significant, but in the grand scheme of things, that's over a quarter of an hour of actual quality sleep. So then we look at another paper to understand the mechanisms here. There was a study that was published in Nutrients. Now, what we do know about magnesium is that magnesium is required for melatonin production in the first place. That's great. But we also know that there's another component. Okay, magnesium indirectly helps sleep, and it does so by blocking what is called the NMDA receptor. How this impacts sleep is pretty fascinating. Most of us have what is called hyperactive glutamatergic neurotransmission. It means that we're so stressed and so wired that we have so much glutamate pumping all the time that we are in a constant state of sort of excitability. Okay, when you block the NMDA receptor with magnesium, you sort of reduce this presynaptic like glutamate response. And what that means is you're not producing as much glutamate and less is actually binding. So you literally feel more relaxed and calm. This prevents that hyperexcitability. And I want you to think of it like this. Let's say you get up at 2 a.m. because you have to pee, and then you lay back in bed and you're like jolted awake and you can't fall back asleep. This is a perfect example of hyperexcitability, right? So if your brain was sort of tuned down a little bit more, you might still feel those like thoughts racing through your head. That's at a different level, but it's not gonna get things wired up and get you fired up to where, you know that feeling. It's like the same feeling you get when you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you passed a cop that you didn't see before, right? And you just get that jolt of adrenaline where you're like, whoa, oh shoot, hope I don't get caught for speeding, right? That happens when these thoughts pop in your head and it like jolts you awake with adrenaline. Imagine if that was dulled a little bit. So that can make a huge difference. Now, before I get into the next one, it's important to note that your daily sort of levels of magnesium play a critical role. And although taking magnesium at like 600 or 800 milligrams is hugely effective, by the way, I used to take like 400 to 500, and I started noticing that I had better sleep improvement if I creeped that up to like 800 milligrams. I'm a bigger dude, so that makes sense. So you need to play with the dose a little bit, but go for something like a dimagnesium malate or something that's a little bit slower acting so it doesn't make you have to run to the bathroom in the middle of the night. But the other piece to pay attention to is like your sodium, your potassium, and your magnesium levels throughout the course of the day. So I find if I take electrolytes throughout the day, my sodium levels are high enough that I retain the magnesium better. I put a link down below for the electrolytes that I recommend. They're called LMNT. They have 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. So at least as far as depleting what I deplete when I work out or when I'm walking around or sweating, this fills that void. So that link down below gets you a free variety pack with any purchase. So I love their citrus salt, their mango chili, their lemon habanero, all delicious flavors. They even have a chocolate salt flavor, which is super good. Anyhow, you can try all those flavors because you get a free variety pack when you use my link down below for any purchase. So that link is drinklmnt.com/Thomas. It's in the top line of the description. They are a sponsor on this channel, and I appreciate the heck out of them for letting us create this content and be able to continue to do so. So check them out. Next up is an interesting one that I usually consume in a tea form, but you can consume it in supplement as well. I'm talking about passion flower, and there was a study that was published in Clinical Psychopharmacology that conducted a randomized control trial. Okay, it was 110 participants and took a look at passion flower versus placebo. Now in this particular case, they were taking it for about 2 weeks. They found there was a 23-minute total increase in their sleep compared to placebo. Now again, we're talking almost a half an hour. Like if you're only getting 6 hours, Like, we're talking a good chunk of your total sleep. But we have to look at a study published in Sleep Science to understand the mechanism. Interestingly enough, passion flower attaches to GABA A and GABA B, which helps you feel more relaxed, right? Helps you, sort of has a sedative effect. Now, interestingly enough, when you look at magnesium, magnesium sort of blocks glutamate from binding, right? So magnesium sort of helps cut the excitability, so to speak, whereas passion flower sort of physically relaxes you more. So it's, although both are kind of getting to the same end result, it's like magnesium blocks the excitability, whereas passion flower influences the relaxation. So they can work in tandem together because magnesium is blocking the glutamatergic response or release, and passion flower is influencing GABA, getting us to the same place but via slightly different routes. So they're a great combination together. Number 3 is one that's really interesting that people don't often take enough of. Once again, the dose makes the poison, but the dose also makes the result. And this is glycine, the simple, cheap amino acid. Now, people take magnesium glycinate because it's magnesium bound to glycine. That shows how effective the stuff is. But if you're taking magnesium bound to glycine, the amount of glycine you're getting is negligible, although still impactful. But the literature that I've been looking at suggests quite a bit more. There was a study published in Sleep and Biological Rhythms. It took a look at placebo versus 3 grams of glycine 1 hour before bed. And that's what's cool about glycine, is it is something that you take shortly before bed for a powerful effect. What they found with this is that subjects not only fell asleep faster, but they ended up getting into the slow wave sleep patterns faster, and they had less awakenings. So let's say, for example, you only can sleep like 5 or 6 hours. Arguably, if you got into slow wave sleep patterns faster, you'd get more out of that short amount of sleep. I'm not saying that the stage 1, stage 2 sleep is a necessary evil, because it's very important, but a lot of times it's dragged on too much. Like, if you ever look at your sleep metrics and your sleep watch or whatever tells you you're not getting enough REM or you're not getting deep sleep, you're probably not getting into the slow wave rhythms that you actually need. You're spending a lot of time in the light sleep phase, which is restorative for certain things and memory consolidation, but not what we really need to get that full pattern. And there was a study that was published in Neuropsychopharmacology that helped us kind of understand the mechanisms here. It found that glycine reduces the core body temperature and increases peripheral vasodilation. So you're expanding sort of the blood flow to the extremities, allowing the core to cool, which is actually a huge part of melatonin production and overall relaxation. So far we have magnesium, passion flower, and glycine, realistically, which could all be taken together. I would recommend at minimum 2 grams of glycine to really get an effect, all the way up to 4 or 5, as long as you're not getting any kind of digestive issues from it. Number 4 is one that's very interesting. It has a specific category. Okay, and that's chamomile. Okay, and there was a study that took a look at chamomile in supplement form, which I would recommend. If you're going to take chamomile, take it in a supplement form. It's much more potent. It almost has an effect that's almost sort of tranquilizer-like, and it binds specifically to GABA A, not to GABA B. Now, what this means is that you're still functioning. Like, if you bind to GABA A and GABA B, you're just going to get dead dog tired. And if you bind to GABA A, you feel sedated. So this is a really good option for people that are just super stressed, that maybe want to wind down. A little bit of chamomile a few hours before bed is almost going to give you this ability to just Netflix and chill and just kind of relax, right? And then when it's time to go to bed, then it can just happen. I almost can't even take chamomile because I feel sort of drunk from it. It really has that much of an impact, especially if you take it in a capsule form. But if that's what you're after, you may want to give it a shot because it's a heck of a lot better than alcohol. Finally, one of my personal favorites, I'm talking about theanine in this case, but theanine people don't take enough once again. There was a study that was looking at children with ADHD. It was a fascinating paper because they gave kids 400 milligrams of theanine, whereas the recommended dose is usually about 200 on the high end. They found that this increased their total sleep, but it also increased their sleep efficiency percentage, like how efficient and productive their sleep was, with absolutely 0 adverse effects at this higher dose. So I took this to heart and I stopped taking 200 and I started taking 400 and 600. And I started noticing that, wow, the benefits for me start at 400. Now, me as an online just YouTube guy, I can't tell you the exact amount to take, but I can tell you, you need to test it out on yourself. Here's a really interesting paper though. If you drink caffeine, you might find that theanine could be your best friend. So they gave rats 7.5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. Okay, then they put them on either placebo or they gave them caffeine plus anywhere from 22.5 to 150 milligrams of theanine. What they found with this was very interesting. They found that at all dosages, theanine had a powerful impact on sleep. It definitely improved sleep and their ability to relax. What was really interesting is at the 75 to 150 range, it sort of countered the effects of caffeine. So much so that it improved their sleep and it decreased the wakefulness that would happen with caffeine. Remember this, caffeine has a pretty long half-life overall. Like it stays in your system for quite a bit. So even if you stop drinking it at noon, there's still caffeine in your system at night, which is absolutely impacting your sleep. So theanine has the ability to combat this. It can counter the effects of caffeine. And we're seeing that in order for this to really take a noticeable effect, it has to be at a higher amount. Now, obviously these mice or rats were small. So what I would recommend is try creeping up more like 400 milligrams, especially if you've had caffeine. And in fact, there's even compounds called theacrine, which bind caffeine and theanine together for this reason. But you're better off to have a more potent effect of theanine by taking it later in the day or towards the evening if you had caffeine in the morning. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.